Hi everyone, welcome back to the COVID Wellness Series. I'm Jenna Callahan, the social worker at the Powassan Area Family Health Team, and this is the second part of our series. Today's topic of conversation is keeping connected in the COVID-19 pandemic. I gave special consideration to the holiday season coming up, whether or not you're celebrating Christmas or Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or even if you're not a super religious person and you're just celebrating the winter solstice. There's always something special about this time of year, and most of that has a lot of tradition in families and socializing. So I definitely wanted to give extra attention and care to those celebrations. So let's see how we do. Okay. So, like I was saying, it's very obvious that the pandemic has changed the way that we look at socializing. I think that a lot of us really took it for granted. I think a lot of us didn't even consider the amount of thought that could go into socializing. I know that I didn't. I look back at my experiences of just even the simple act of going over to my mom's house or family events, and the way that's changed and the thought that needs to be put into it. And it could be exhausting. So anyways, some of the changes, obviously, either the way that we see family or the inability to see family, given certain considerations, whether they're in different areas from ours or they're in long-term care facilities that don't allow that or have very strict restrictions with that. We can't leave or we're encouraged not to. So going on things like vacations aren't really a major thing right now, or even hobbies like, hockey, those were stopped, soccer, anything that includes close contact or groups of people. Even the talk shows that we watch or sports don't have audiences or have to be like 6 feet apart. It's very interesting. For those of us who are not necessarily technologically savvy, that's been a huge strain and a huge educational process, we'll say, to those who have eventually come around to being successful. I never thought that I would have to give a series of health via video. I never thought I would have my face on a YouTube channel for a family health team. It's wild. Obviously, isolation has been a big factor, and I really want to acknowledge those who are feeling lonely or feeling disconnected. I want to acknowledge that that's a very real feeling, and you're not alone in that. And we'll get into ways that we can kind of reduce those overall feelings. And of course, every other mental health implication that we're experiencing right now. Things are very different. And like I talked about within the last series, it has its impacts on mental health. The pandemic has been a hit to our social support systems. Huge. So let's talk about it. And before I kind of go into what social supports are, why they're so important, I really feel the need to acknowledge the grief or the mourning that people could be feeling at this moment, not only based on the loss of family, if they have been impacted by this coronavirus in and of itself, but also those who are mourning the loss of their friendships, their closeness, and their connection with people that may be really strained right now. Traditions, mourning the upcoming holidays for what they were or what they could be. Grief isn't necessarily just the loss of a human, it's the loss of the way that things made us feel and the joy that we receive and the inability to have that to some extent. So I think it's important to acknowledge that people are grieving right now in a lot of different ways, and people grieve in very different ways. We kind of always resort back to that 5 stages of grief, where we have denial, and this is in no particular order for the record, denial, sadness, anger, bargaining, and then finally acceptance. Usually we think that it's quite a linear process, but we can bounce through all of those feelings given the time of day. So I think giving time and space to people who are going through these cycles of feelings and ensuring acknowledgement of those feelings is a really important part of this process. And I'm always going to be the biased person who says reach out to supports if you need them, reach out to professional care if you need them, to help get through this. Okay, so let's talk about social supports in general. Humans are really social creatures. That's how we have evolved so successfully. We've relied heavily on one another to those extents in survival, food-wise, comfort-wise, sharing, building societies in which we're all safe from threats. This is going to be a topic that I always kind of touch on as even the sessions go. I do find myself to be like a very evolutionary based psychology, like I have that background, and I think that it's really important to acknowledge. So social support has helped us as humans survive, and it's something that we depend on, not something that can kind of just come and go. And we find that as we look to people who have the most satisfaction in life, or those who are really thriving within their mental health, a really key common factor is that they have really strong social supports around them. So what social support is having comfort knowing that there are people around us who love us, who have our backs, who are going to protect us, and who think that we're good, solid people. That's what social support is. And we give that back to those we love as well. So there's 4 kind of major types of social support. We have the emotional support. So this is like the person you go to when you're having a bad day, or even just that person who needs to pick you back up and be like, hey man or woman, you're awesome. And I'm going to be your cheerleader forever and ever. If you need me, call me, no matter where you are, no matter how far. That's a song quote. Second is practical help. And this is the person I think about when I think of this, this type of help and support is my stepdad, because he's the guy who, if you need your tire changed, if you don't know how, a screwdriver works or a drill, he's there to be like, yep, all right, let me show you how to do this. And he gives lessons, right? So that's the person I think of. And that's what practical help is helping us get through our day-to-day as smoothly and as routinely as possible. And, that teaching as well. The third, sharing points of view. This one's a lot of fun. It's basically the healthy debaters of the group. We all have those people that, if particularly these days, I find who have very differing points of view and who just want someone to talk to about it. I think that this is really important. Like the key word there was healthy, because this could also not be so supportive right now, given people's theories that they have or perspectives. So that's an important kind of key. But it's good to it's very valuable to get other people's perspectives in the way that they view the world. It's valuable no matter what. Number 4, sharing information. And this is kind of like the mentor, the person who's trying to teach you or to guide you through life by sharing information. They're the newscaster. They're the one who's like, hey, did you hear about that thing? And we rely on that a lot. It's how we learn. It's how we grow. It's how we intellectualize. And it makes us more overall well-rounded people. So why is social support so important? Other than what I had said before about us evolving to literally need it, which I think is in and of itself is it's a good sell for social support. It's also our protective factor for stress. So I talked about stress in the last video and how harmful it could potentially be. When they say stress is the #1 killer, I believe it. I believe it 100%. Just in all of those things that I talked about regarding the heart and the strain that stress can put on the heart, on breathing, blood pressure, muscle tension, headaches, you name it. Stress has a lot of really harmful effects, and social support counteracts those effects with some really healthy benefits. And a lot of kind of studies show that having one isolated person who's taking on the the brunt of a load of stress is really harmful. But if we can kind of divvy it up amongst group members or family, then it's not so pressing on one person. They kind of feel like they have better ability to cope. So that's why it's so important. So getting support needs met is obviously a really big factor in ensuring that we maintain these social supports. So more often than not, there's different people in our lives that fit into the types of support that I talked about. Like I said, my stepdad, definitely the practical help guy. For emotional support, I tend to go to my sister or my mom, sharing information. There's a lot of people in my life that I do that with, like my boss, my colleagues, my friends. And for sharing points of view, I go to my dad, my bio dad, and my brother. So I have all of these different people in my life just as an example of who I go to for those different types of support. And they all provide very different, but all equally beneficial things in my life. And usually the best support can come to those that we feel closest to in our lives. So that, on my end, being a counselor and the one who talks to people and tries to offer them support, I still am not going to stand up to the people in that person's life that see them every single day. And I really try to get my clients to surround themselves by people that uplift them and make them feel worthy and happy and offer support. That's kind of a piece of the puzzle. So support's important. All right, so let's talk particularly about the holiday season. I may accidentally refer to some of the upcoming slides. I may refer to Christmas. That just is because that's the holiday that I celebrate and is the holiday that's traditionally most celebrated in the area that I live. However, I hope that doesn't make people feel like I'm excluding their religion. And yeah, I may slip up. I don't know. I even I'm already kind of biased in the sense of the way that I've created the PowerPoint presentation or the way that I dressed today. My nail color even, it's like red. Yeah, I have Christmas painted all over my face. But yes, I'm so sorry if I accidentally slip up, but this is a holiday season for a lot of different people, and I want to acknowledge that as well. Okay, so here's when things get a little bit finicky, because the holiday season is going to be different this year, no matter what. Even if social protocols and restrictions are completely broken and we pretend that we don't have them, there's still going to be a big topic of conversation around the pandemic, upstanding everything else. So what I'm encouraging people to do is to find out what their own boundaries are. Now, what I mean by this is to really dig within ourselves to find out where we stand. We may get pushed by family or by our friends to get together when we may not feel safe to, or encouraged to take off our mask. So it's important before heading into the holiday season full throttle to just take a step back and figure out where we stand. What do we feel? What's our comfort level in regards to this? And then to kind of, at least that puts us in a place confidently to go forward, and the likelihood of those boundaries being broken lessens. Another is to have empathy and respect for those who have differing opinions than our own. What I mean by this, and that's kind of this example that I've put here, is the life versus quality of life. This is regarding the coronavirus and the way that people are deciding to kind of move forward with this being a part of our lives. Some people are living very, very restrictedly. They are only going outside to go to the grocery store, and then they're going straight home. If they can work from home, they will, because life is really, really important to them, and the risk just doesn't matter. What I'm like, people that this category may fall under is the elderly, people with young children, pregnant women, who else? People who are immunocompromised. So these people, life may be very, very important to them, and they don't want to risk it. However, on kind of the other side of the spectrum here, we have people who value the quality of life. And these are the people who are tired of being so restricted, and they just don't want to have to think so long and hard about socializing and get-togethers. They don't want to wear masks anymore. They don't care to wear masks. They want to go on vacations. They think borders should be opened up. And to be clear, this is a spectrum, right? We don't just have people on one end and people on the other. There's all types of in between here. It's not just a very clear black and white situation. Although that may be another opinion, and some people may believe that it's a black or white. So neither of these people are wrong inherently, right? Everyone is entitled to have their own opinions. I'm not here to say which person is wrong or which person is right in this scenario. It doesn't matter. I'm saying respect those who have opinions that are different than our own. There's been enough arguing via social media, through family. People have very strong opinions about this, but it's important to empathize and try to understand where the other person's coming from and the situations that have led them to have the beliefs that they have. So that's what I mean. And that's why it's important for us first to have those boundaries of our own, to be like, yep, you believe that, that's fine. Here's my beliefs. And if you decide either to put yourselves at risk or not put yourselves at risk, that's an individual choice. I also can't sit here and tell people not to follow public health guidelines. That's like my personal ethics and my personal morals, and also those, of the organization that I work within. I do recommend following public health. There are people that are way smarter than me and way more knowledgeable in this than I am. So that's kind of my mentality, and that's my boundary. So as this is my presentation, that's my boundary, is that I recommend that people follow public health guidelines. Yes, and obviously once we have these boundaries, we try to be empathetic and sympathetic and respectful. We have to communicate those boundaries to those in our social bubble, just like the way that I did just now. I guess that was a bit of a practice run for my own future holiday season. Communicating boundaries is important. And this can be a cause of stress for a lot of people. So I needed to acknowledge it and throw it in there. More tips for socializing are to keep conversations light. If you know that things are going to cause an argument, like you want to be talking to those that you love at the holiday season, what shows have you watched recently? Any good movies? Listen to any good true crime podcasts? How are the pets? How are the cousins? I don't know, everything. There's lots to talk about. I'm sure that some sort of lighter topic of conversation that isn't going to cause conflict is approachable. I also recommend to take a break from social media for some people if the weight of the conversations that people are having or the opinions of others are too much. There's a lot of opinions. I mean, even not even upstanding COVID-19, but about the Black Lives Matter movement was a topic a while ago, but it still kind of comes up. Also, the presidential election in the United States and the rioting and things that are going on south of us. Sometimes it gets a little too much, and we can get very overstimulated. Just like I talked about evolutionarily, going back to how much we need socializing, there's also a limit to when too much is too much. And social media is kind of the epitome of that, in that we're constantly being bombarded with updates and messages and questions and requests. So our brain hasn't adapted to be able to recognize all of this stimuli, and it can get very fatigued. So I recommend that highly. I'm actually on a social media my break myself. Yeah. So another is doing physical activities together. What I mean by that is trying to do something active, get out there, release some endorphins, obviously in a manageable way where social distancing can be maintained and the boundaries of others can be maintained as well as our own. So doing something that's fun, doing something that's a little bit different. And also participating in clubs or social organizations. I wanted to include this in here to kind of break up that isolation that some people are feeling. A lot of the clubs or social organizations that I've seen out there have moved to online because they've had to. So they're adapting to our current situation, right? There's things to find out there. Joining an online book club for people who have the same interests. Or the Lions Club for volunteering. There's a million that are out there. Anyways, but yes, these are tips for socializing, for maintaining socialization, for breaking monotony, for feeling more connected, for meeting maybe new people. Yeah. So in particular with our holiday celebrations, from what I've heard from clients, friends, family, people are really missing their traditions right now. They're really longing for just their usual big family get togethers where everyone is like yelling over one another, and they miss those things. So, how to kind of cope with that is to put our positivity, just like I mentioned last time in the last video, focusing on the positivity into traditions that can continue. Traditions like watching, your favorite holiday movie while drinking hot chocolate, or attending a church service if that's something that you do around the holidays, or driving around and looking at the Christmas lights. Those things are all fairly safe or have been amended to be fairly safe traditions that can continue, and even create some new traditions. Letters to family, or you need to stick at home and maybe build a gingerbread house for the first time. There are really creative ways that are out there, and I've even Googled some of them just to like pass the time. There are ways to continue these traditions, but to also make these really cool new ones. And of course, recognizing technology as a huge benefit within the holiday season this year. Use that technology to our advantage or to your advantage to connect with the ones that you love, those who can't be there, ones who are maybe in lockdown or are in red zones and can't travel. That's a way to keep connected. Gathering outdoors has kind of been recommended as what we would regard as being like the safest, like low risk way to still keep connected. There are ways to do that, going for walks with friends, or I know that if there's ice skating rinks that are still open and available. But in one of the parks in North Bay, there's a little ice skating rink that's being put together, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, skidooing. If any of those activities are still manageable, of course, I have to say I'm not very knowledgeable in things like skidooing. I'm more of an indoor cat, but follow those. Follow those recommendations. Get together outdoors. I know even recreational fires can be a thing with a permit, please and thank you, just for liability purposes. And again, I'm going to say it, please follow the recommendations of the public health unit. Like I said, they're much smarter than me anyway. I don't know. So that's it. That is our presentation. Again, as usual, any questions can be put into the SurveyMonkey link that's below or next to this video somewhere. The next session is going to be understanding anger, coping skills, and healthy thinking. So that's going to be coming your way on January 8th, 2021. So this is the last video of the 2020 year. Thank God it's over. Like let's cross our fingers that 2021 is a little bit easier on all of us. And again, some useful resources. Always reach out to the Poisson Area Family Health Team if you are a patient of ours, even if you're not, or just looking for more information. You can also check out our Facebook page. I also put in a new resource in here. It's for peer support. So what that is people who are kind of going through similar experiences can get support from one another. And this is the website. It's called togetherall.com. I recommend that for someone or for people who are just needing that extra support from people who get it. And that's that. So I want to wish everyone a very, very safe and happy holiday with your loved ones or home alone in whatever capacity that is. I wish you all the very, very best end of the year and wonderful holiday season. I hope you have lots of really good food and lots of laughter. And I will see you all in 2021. Bye, everyone. Have a good day.